You want to know how to destroy a 25-year suburban dictatorship in exactly 6 minutes? I'll tell you, because that's how long it took me to accidentally collapse the HOA Queen's empire using nothing but a cardboard box, a measuring tape, and a handful of documents. It all started when I pulled into my grandparents' old lakeside cabin, my quiet escape after months of corporate whistleblowing that got me fired. I was hoping for peace. Instead, I got Dorothy Mitchell, the self-appointed tyrant of the neighborhood, appearing in my driveway like a ghost in a lavender blazer, tape measure in hand, eyes colder than winter steel. "You're in violation, I'm calling 911, she snapped, measuring my car's distance from the curb and even crouching down to check the height of each blade of grass. Her lackey Richard filmed everything like he was shooting a true crime docu-series. By the next day, my face was plastered on the community bulletin board with Violator of the Month in screaming red letters. Kids pointed at me like I was a criminal. It felt like I'd been dropped into a twisted HOA-themed version of Mean Girls, except instead of clicks, people got fined for dandelions. I could have packed up and left like everyone else Dorothy had driven out. But then two things changed everything. First, I saw her flinch at the mention of her ex, Bob, the original HOA president who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. Second, Harold, an old-timer who'd known my grandparents, invited me for tea and told me a story that chilled me to the bone. Turns out, Bob and Dorothy had formed the HOA with forged signatures. Harold, along with several others, never signed those documents. Some signatures even belonged to people who had died before the HOA was created. That was the crack in Dorothy's concrete-thin authority. The next morning, I went straight to the county records office, praying Dorothy hadn't planted any spies. There, I ran into Linda Morrisana. Neighbor Dorothy once fined $500 for planting the wrong flowers, and Stan, a county clerk whose wife got fined for painting their shutters a slightly different shade of blue. We started digging through deeds and signatures, and that's when we struck gold. Buried in my grandparents' original property deed was a clause stating their land could never be annexed into a neighborhood association without explicit written consent, which they had never given. "Your HOA proof," Stan told me with a grin. I was immune to Dorothy's reign of terror. She had zero legal authority over my land, couldn't fine me, couldn't demand anything. But that wasn't enough, because while I was safe, people like Harold and Linda were still trapped in Dorothy's fake kingdom. So, I gave Dorothy exactly what she wanted: a fight. I deliberately broke the HOA rules, set my sprinklers to run 15 minutes past the allowed time, let the grass grow tall. She took the bait. Like clockwork, she and Richard came storming in with a stack of violation notices and a threat to put a lien on my property. I just smiled, handed her a copy of my deed, and told her to read the part about pre-existing property rights. Her face drained of color. In a last-ditch act, she called 911, claiming I was aggressive and threatening her. But when the police arrived, the officer, clearly fed up with HOA theatrics, took one look at my paperwork and said, "Ma'am, filing a false report is a criminal offense. You have no authority here. Don't call us again." That was my opening. In the next 6 minutes, I made the call that started the collapse. I contacted Stan, Linda, Harold, and a lawyer named Davis. I posted the truth in the neighborhood Facebook group. The fuse was lit. Dorothy stood frozen on my lawn as the house of cards she built began to fall. By morning, Stan had found more dirt. There had never been a legal HOA election after Bob left. Dorothy had simply declared herself president. Those original formation documents, full of forged names including several people who were already dead when they signed. Even Richard cracked. "I thought she was elected. I thought we were following the rules," he said, visibly shaken. Turns out, Dorothy had raked in hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal fines, bullied countless residents into silence, and ruled with fake authority for over a decade. That evening, we held a community meeting. The room was packed, room only, neighbors spilling into hallways. I presented everything: forged signatures, illegal fines, my immunity clause. Slide after slide revealed the rot under her rule. Gasps turned to outrage. Years of frustration erupted in that single moment. Dorothy tried to hold on to power, yelling that she protected the neighborhood, but the damage was done. Janet Palmer, who had once been fined simply for asking questions, stood up and said, "Your pain doesn't excuse what you've done to us." The vote to dissolve the HOA passed almost unanimously. Dorothy sat in silence as neighbors started planning refunds, lawsuits, and a real future without her. She didn't get dragged away in handcuffs. No, real life doesn't always work like that. But she did sell her house at a loss and fled to Arizona, still blaming everyone but herself. Richard and other former enforcers stayed behind to help rebuild, even providing recordings of Dorothy's power trips. And me, I bought her house at auction for half the price and turned it into a community garden and rec center. No more rulebooks, just tomatoes, laughter, and kids riding bikes. People keep thanking me, but all I did was shine a light. The power was always with the community. They just needed a reminder. 6 minutes. That's all it took to bring down an empire built on lies. Because sometimes the strongest walls don't fall from force, they crumble under the weight of truth. Now let me ask you this, if you had to take down an HOA tyrant like Dorothy, would you walk away, or would you burn the whole rulebook down? Drop your story in the comments, and if you believe every neighborhood deserves freedom over fear, share this. Peace out.